And welcome back to the show. Well, I want to take a look now at one of the films that has been billed one of the must-see films of this year. It is the brand new film from director-screenwriter Jeff Nichols, who of course has brought us some great films over the years, including Mud and Midnight Special. This film is kind of special in a sense because it's called The Bikeriders, and it's based on a very, very famous book by Danny Lyon, who traced kind of the history of a motorcycle gang in America's Midwest in the 1970s. And this film kind of tells that story. So it's told through the eyes of Danny, who's played here by Mike Faust, who's been doing a series of interviews with Kathy, played by Jodie Comer, who kind of ran into this bikie gang by accident one night. She went to help a friend out with some money at a bar, and while there, met this motorcycle gang called the Vandals. Now, they were run by Johnny, played by Tom Hardy in the film, and he kind of set it up to be a social group to start with. It was a group that guys like himself and Zipco, played by Michael Shannon, could come together and race their motorbikes and then go for kind of road trips together. But it kind of became more of a bikie gang as time went on. Now, how Kathy becomes so involved with the group is she meets Benny, played by Austin Butler, who is part of the gang, but at the start he's kind of nearly a bit of an outsider with the gang himself. There's a lot of jokes about that he crashes his bike every time he rides it and things like that. But he becomes besotted by Kathy straight away as well. He ends up taking her home and kind of waits outside until her boyfriend leaves her so that he can be with her, and they're married within 5 weeks. That's something that Kathy ends up telling Danny as the story goes on. But this film shows how this kind of social group ends up becoming more like the bikie gangs that we know of today. Kathy kind of alludes in her opening monologue that as time went on, she started to see more and more of the police the more that she was around Benny. And Benny's kind of an interesting character. He's quiet, but he'll do anything for his colours. We see that at the start of this film where he refuses to take off his gang colours when these guys tell him to in a bar. And it kind of shows how persistent and how loyal he is. But look, this is an interesting film. I love the way that it does kind of show how this gang that Johnny started up as a friendship group kind of gets out of control. It starts to become more and more like the bikie gangs that we would know of today. At the same time, you see Kathy trying to change Benny and make him, I guess, the kind of husband that she wants. But the kind of guys that are in this friendship group or gang aren't the kind of guys that want to change. They like their lives. So it's kind of interesting watching it from that point of view as well. Now, going into this film, like I said, this is a film that's been kind of billed as a must-see film of this year. So I was kind of generally excited going into this film, especially considering that Jeff Nichols was the man behind it, because I've loved most of the films that he's made so far in his career. But I've got to say, I was a little bit disappointed in The Bikeriders. And I'll explain why. Because this is a film where I felt it could have gone in so many different directions, but it just kept on feeling like it was being held back. Now, of course, we have seen the inner workings of bikie gangs with movies like 1% over the years, and that did it in quite a graphic way. I don't think The Bikeriders needed to be as graphic as 1%, but what I found interesting with this film was, I'll give you an example of what I mean. So, there's a scene where Benny gets hurt by these two guys. So, Johnny and the rest of the gang go after these guys. Now, in Kathy's dialogue over that scene, she basically says, look, Johnny went berserk and went after these two guys. So we see the scene where Johnny and co turn up to the bar and confront the bar owner, and we see the result of that. but we don't actually ever get to see them go after the two guys that did it. Now, you can only assume that they did because they got those guys' address and got told who they were, but you don't see that. There's also another part it's really weird. This part like really kind of made me think, what is going on here? We see another character who wants to join the gang. Fair enough. He turns up to this picnic that the guys are on, and he basically says, look, I want to join. Who do I speak to? So he's told, go speak to Johnny. So Johnny is literally a few feet away from him. But then we see all the other events at that picnic, but we don't see this guy go up and start speaking to Johnny, which seemed a little bit strange. And this guy, played by Toby Wallace, then a few days later ends up going and talking to Johnny at Johnny's bar. And you're kind of thinking, well, why didn't he talk to him at the park? And it just feels really, really disjointed. But that's something I found all throughout this film. And even the storyline of the kid, you start to see this guy throughout the film. And you're kind of wondering, why are they showing me this guy? Like, you end up kind of preempting what's going to happen because they show him so many times, not around the gang. So you know that they're setting him up as a character. But again, that feels very, very disjointed. And there are so many times in this movie where they would talk about an event or they would allude to an event. And I'm like, in my head thinking, why are you telling me about this event? I want to see it. So, yeah, I just found that for a Jeff Nichols film, it was kind of weird that it did feel so disjointed, because normally his screenplays are a little bit like Tyler Sheridan's. They're top notch. They're brilliant. But this film just felt like it was disjointed with its storyline and wasn't showing the audience the whole story. What saves this film, I would say, are the performances here. And normally I feel the other way around about a film. I've always kind of loved this thing that Ray Mooney, the great Australian playwright, said to me once, and that is that a good script can make a bad actor look good, but a good actor can't make a bad script look good. But in the case of this movie, I think that it's the performances of people like Austin Butler and Tom Hardy that kind of make this film passable, in a sense, because Austin Butler, look, if you remember when I reviewed Elvis, I said that I wasn't that impressed with him as an actor. Since then, I've watched Masters of the Air, and of course, I've seen him in June Part 2, and now this film. I've got to say, I've come around with him as an actor. I think this kid is going to be an absolutely brilliant actor. He's got this James Dean-like quality about him that just makes him an actor that you want to see in a film. If they don't do a James Dean biopic in the next couple of years and hire this kid, Austin Butler, to play James Dean, then they have missed out on a wonderful opportunity. He is even more James Dean-like in this performance here as Benny, as kind of easy riding 1970s motorcyclist. He is amazing in this film. I gotta say the same with Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy once again plays a character that is so far out of character for him, and he does it so remarkably well. Michael Shannon doesn't get a lot to do as Zipco, but he's magnificent in the scenes that he is in. As normal as well, Jodie Comer captures her accent 100% and does an amazing performance. It's their performances, and the performance of Norman Reedus as well, showing up as Funny Sonny, that make this film passable, because I think the screenplay here needed a rewrite. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if this film hasn't been cut down, that someday we don't see a director's cut where there's a lot more, because, like I said, it feels like parts of the story have been left out, and it feels a little bit disjointed. when that happens. But look, this is an okay film, has an amazing soundtrack for that time period, and the way they capture the 1970s is absolutely fantastic. I just felt that it needed a little bit of a rewrite when it came to the screenplay, because it just feels like there's a lot of parts missing out of this film that needed to be told, a lot of stories there. So, look, I am going to give this one 3 out of 5. I was expecting something a lot better, but look, it is passable, like I said. So I'm giving the Bikeriders 3 out of 5. It is a general release, so it should be showing at a cinema near you. So go and check it out if you get a chance.